you've been consistent from day one in support of Julian Assange. You host a show called Assange Countdown to Freedom. You've been in touch with Julian. You actually interviewed him on that show
right
early on, right? And
yeah, back in 2016, 2017 twice, and then he got locked up. The second time I interviewed him, that's how Assange Countdown to Freedom came into being. It was April 11, 2000. I got to make this point, 2017, because he had done a show that's on WBAI in the morning, but it's also its own show, Democracy Now!, early on April 10th, 2017. And he got ambushed. I mean, totally ambushed by Amy Goodman and who was it? Juan Gonzalez and this character by the name of Alan Nairn.
Alan Nairn, who's a great journalist, who's done a lot of really important stuff. But that interview was an ambush. It was.
Well, you take a look at it, and they haven't apologized for that.
Let's take a look at that, Randy, and then let's get your comments.
Yeah.
After we take a look at this, as soon as I'm able to bring it up. This is part one.
They need to make a public apology for this. They have to atone for it. They can't just it didn't happen. It happened.
It happened. Okay. Well, these are some highlights I pulled right before this live stream because I wanted to discuss this because Amy is moderating the Belmarsh Tribunal despite having done this, and this was just utterly disgusting. But of a part with what democracy has become.
Democracy Now has become. DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, in October, The Intercept published a conversation between Glenn Greenwald and Naomi Klein about WikiLeaks' decision to disclose thousands of John Podesta's personal emails. This is part of what Naomi Klein said.
I would add, it's not just that they didn't curate it and just dumped it all, right? They are dumping it, but they are doling out the dumps, right?
They're dumping it and doling it out, right?
Clearly to maximize damage, right? So they're not just saying, hey, information wants to be free. Here's everything we have. Journalists have a field day, go through it, right? They're very clearly looking for media attention. You can tell that just by looking at the WikiLeaks, Twitter feed, and timing it right before the debate.
That was Naomi Klein in October. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Your response to some of her remarks?
Well, I think it's a bit rich for Naomi Klein, who's a very wealthy woman sitting up there in Canada, to be accusing a political prisoner who's been detained for the last 7 years without charge in violation of 2 UN rulings without getting her facts straight.
My view of this is that
this is Alan
during
Nairn.
the campaign, WikiLeaks often suggested that Trump would be less dangerous than Clinton.
No, we didn't.
I think you did.
No, we didn't.
I think that concept is wildly, gruesomely mistaken. There was the argument.
That's fine for you to say that, but you should understand that no, we didn't.
However, I would note that the Trump campaign thought that WikiLeaks was on their side. Now, the idea that Mr. Assange just suggested that Trump and Clinton were equally dangerous, two different deadly diseases, I think is wildly and gruesomely mistaken.
Wildly and gruesomely. He likes saying wildly and gruesomely.
And, he did not know, because I spoke to him that night, and he asked me to do the show the next day. And he did the show the next day. Hence, that's how Assange Countdown to Freedom started. He and John Pilger were on the next day. And because he was so unsettled by that attack, the three of them, they were supposed to talk about whatever the new revelations were. I think it was Vault 7. But they didn't. They went right. Vault 7 had been released, and they couldn't talk about that. And then 3 days later, you have Pompeo 4 days later coming out. I guess he felt it was okay since the putative left is attacking Julian Assange. We may as well call him a hostile intelligence force or whatever he called them. So that was a very bad move by them. And I urge the three of them to make a public apology right now because they haven't atoned for it. You just can't act like it didn't happen because it did a lot of damage.
Aaron, wasn't there a component of that interview where they started to challenge Julian Assange on being essentially in league with or colluding with Russia.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was in that interview, but there's definitely one interview where, I don't think Alan Nairn was there for that, but I remember this, where there was, Adam Schiff was spreading all this innuendo about WikiLeaks and Assange colluding with the Trump campaign, and Randy Credico, our guest, being the back channel somehow, right? All this ridiculous stuff. And I remember Democracy Now! Basically parroting that, taking it seriously as if it actually might be true, and repeatedly pressing Julian Assange on it. And at some point he says, I don't have time for this. This is just really stupid. And I'm sorry Julian Assange said to Amy on air, he said, I'm sorry to see that you're falling for this. Because
he said that he says, I can't believe you're buying into this. And she says, buying into it, Julian, we've got evidence. I mean, you of course have debunked all of this stuff. I was never back channel. Roger Stone never had a back channel. You've made that clear a million times. You've debunked Russiagate and the whole idea that there was some kind of collusion, and especially it's so ludicrous. Look, I mean, she should say, wait a second. Julian Assange, a journalist, has this hot story, and just a week before he's going to release it, he's going to give it to Roger Stone to have it, and Roger Stone is going to sit on it. I mean,
it's so dumb. But amazingly, Randy, I mean, Democracy Now! I mean, this is an example of where I think Democracy Now!'s editorial standards have fallen on some key issues, not all of them, but on some key issues. And this is a good example. A few years later, in 2019, they brought on their top guest on Russiagate was Marcy Wheeler, who was just he was a leading.
You gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, no, yes, she was their top guest on Russiagate, and she's a just unhinged conspiracy theorist,
a nutcase. She's a complete nutcase.
Well,
I've had so many conversations with her. She actually believes all of this stuff that
she does, and so she came on Democracy Now! To make the case that yes, Roger Stone did have advanced knowledge of WikiLeaks releases, and basically making the case that there was a back channel between Roger Stone, WikiLeaks, and the Trump campaign. And this was aired uncritically on Democracy Now! Of all places. And so now that Julian Assange is being persecuted, I think they've wised up, and now they're covering his story more. And Amy Goodman's there moderating the Belmarsh tribunal today. But it's an example of how at times when it mattered, so many people that progressives have counted on to deliver the news factually and to have a backbone, have some critical thinking skills, have failed. And also at a time when it was so incentivized to sell out Julian Assange, because after 2016, Julian Assange became public enemy number one, even more so than he was before in the eyes of liberals. And accordingly, there's been, there's that mention in that clip of The Intercept. They published all these stories disparaging Julian Assange, taking seriously the idea that he secretly conspired with Russia. And so there's been all these incentives in media to throw Julian under the bus. And Randy, you deserve a lot of credit because you have not jumped onto that bandwagon.
You and Aaron have done incredible work on Syria, and you don't see that. I want to go back to Democracy Now! They don't do balanced work, if you want to call it balanced at all.
They suck.
They suck on Syria. They were not good. They have not been good on the Ukrainian stuff. They always have this one woman on talking about atrocities committed by the Russians, but nothing about what Ukrainians have done I don't know if they did anything about what this foreign minister said who just resigned under Zelensky. If they did anything on that, they certainly
they don't. Randy, they don't do what they used to cover. So we used to, but back when I was there at Democracy Now!, we covered the Maidan coup. We covered the role of the U.S. in placing weapon systems in Poland and Romania, the expansion of NATO, all the provocations. If you go back and watch the old Democracy Now!, you'll see better coverage of the current Ukraine war than the current Democracy Now! Because we used to have on people like Stephen F. Cohen before he was banned as a guest on Democracy Now! After
really?
Oh yeah,
he was banned from Democracy Now! That was amazing.
I was banned from Democracy Now! John Pilger was banned from Democracy Now! He wrote me a long note about how he was banned because one of their major funders from the Lannan Foundation decided he didn't like him.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I know Soros is a funder, and I know that the Ford Foundation and these.
I don't know if they're funders.
I don't know who the funders are, but they get big money. They have take a look at that studio. It's as big as MSNBC.
It is.
And
I mean, I used to hang out with all the Democracy Now! Crew, and they were like my buddies in New York, and they're like what I look to as real grassroots journalists, and something changed dramatically. Don't have time to go into all of it and speculate. I would just say, yeah, they did great work in the past, and now I would consider Democracy Now! To be an enemy. I wouldn't approach them as some friend of the anti-war movement that's gone astray. I consider Amy Goodman to be completely on the other side. She pushed the Syria dirty war. She pushed the white helmet psyop. She pushed at every step of the way. She pushed Russiagate. She hosted freaking Kurt Eichenwald 4 times.
Well,
not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4 times. The biggest fraud of Russiagate. She sandbagged Julian Assange. She's now pushing the Ukraine proxy war narrative. She pushed the Uyghur genocide narrative to gin up a new Cold War with China. It's nonstop on Democracy Now! It's not the exception to the rulers. It's an accessory to the ruling class. And there needs to be a substantial challenge